Hello, I'm Shannon.
And I'm Colleen.
And this is Pop Culture Pie, where one of us picks a topic, but the other does not know what the topic is. So it's Colleen's turn this month. So what are we talking about today?
Today, we're serving up a slice of Hogwarts.
Oh, like Hogwarts specifically?
Even more specific than that.
Oh, okay.
But a slice of Hogwarts sounded best when I practiced this in my head.
So what's even more specific than that?
I like to call it the science of sorting.
Oh, okay.
You know, I have very strong opinions about
me too.
sorting. Thankfully, we usually have the same opinions, which is nice.
So this should be a short podcast.
It's not. I wrote out pages.
I bet.
I did. This is what I do when I'm at my job.
You read about Hogwarts.
I legit did.
Well, it could be a slice of Hogwarts sorting, I guess.
I don't know. I thought a slice of Hogwarts just
Slice of
sounded
Hogwarts
best.
is good. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Tell me about it.
There are a lot of speculations and assumptions made about the Hogwarts houses. And not just by fans, but by characters in the books. And I think it's important to remember that the only absolute facts about each house and its membership criteria are what the Sorting Hat says in its songs. Mm-hmm. Since the Sorting Hat decides, because other people say things about the houses, but that's your opinion, or that's what your parents have said, or that's whatever.
Yeah.
The hat decides. So the hat sings, or we hear the hat song 3 times. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, in Goblet of Fire, and in Order of the Phoenix. And on the interwebs, the songs are titled by year. Mm-hmm. So I have the chunks of the songs that actually talk about the houses. So the 1991 song.
Okay.
You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring nerve and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. In the 1994 song, by Gryffindor, the bravest were prized far beyond the rest. For Ravenclaw, the cleverest would always be the best. For Hufflepuff, hard workers were most worthy of admission, and power-hungry Slytherin loved those of great ambition. And in the 1995 song, there's like 2 sections. So the first part said, Slytherin will teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw will teach those whose intelligence is surest. Said Ravenclaw will teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same. And then later in the song, it says, for instance, Slytherin took only pure-blood wizards of great cunning just like him, and only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest. Those are the songs.
Okay.
So then I wrote down all the traits that are listed. Mm-hmm. So for Gryffindor, brave is said in all 3 songs. Daring is said in 2 songs. And then nerve, chivalry, and bold. In Ravenclaw, no specific trait is repeated, but they all kind of mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Wise, wit, learning, ready mind, cleverest, intelligent, and sharpest mind. Mm-hmm. Hufflepuff, same thing. Nothing specifically is repeated. Just, loyal, patient, true, unafraid of toil, hard worker, good. And then for like the last song, I wrote equality or inclusion.
Yeah.
You know? And Slytherin, cunning is listed in 2 songs. Then ambition, and then blood status is talked about. And then, they say, like, any means to achieve their ends. Mm-hmm. So I tried to, like, narrow it down. Like, what do those mean? So Gryffindor, they're brave, they're daring, and they're chivalrous. Mm-hmm. Ravenclaws are smart, clever, and they like to learn. Hufflepuffs are hard workers, they're just, loyal, and they include everybody. They're inclusive. Slytherins are cunning, ambitious, determined, and theoretically purebloods, or ancestry is purest. So then I was looking at like lists of traits, and I picked out a trait that is attributed to each house but is never stated in a song.
Okay.
So like Gryffindor's determination is often listed. Ravenclaws are almost always listed as creative.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hufflepuff's dedication, and then in Slytherin's self-preservation.
Okay.
So obviously the hat has been singing songs for centuries, and maybe it had a song where it's saying all about how creative Ravenclaws are. But these are the facts that we have them. And anything stated by any other character in the series is influenced by their personal bias. Mm-hmm. So how does the hat sort us? Well, obviously, I think it does look for these traits in you, even if you don't see them in yourself. Like Neville begged the hat to put him into Hufflepuff because he didn't believe he deserved to be in Gryffindor, but the hat was like, no. You do, and because the hat knew. The hat knew. But then I think...
The hat should have been the protagonist of the series.
The hat would have been like, look, these are the facts.
Yeah, like, listen.
Then it would be over.
You're evil, he's good, like, get over it.
But then I think it's important, that it's not just about the traits that you have, it's about the traits that you value. In Philosopher's Stone, Harry calls Hermione a great witch because she's so smart, and she replies, books and cleverness, there are more important things like bravery and friendship. And in Hermione, in book 1, Hermione is smart and she loves to learn, but she values bravery and friendships. Those are more important to her. Obviously, Hermione is very brave as well. But then when I was also looking at things online, one thing talked about Fred and George. They're very cunning and ambitious.
It's true.
They could do well in Slytherin, but they value their friends and family and fun and stuff like that. And I think that sort of leads into my next point, which is the notion of being in two houses.
Yes.
People will say they're a Slitherclaw or a Gryffindor, to which I say no.
I know you feel very strongly about this. You feel more strongly about than I feel.
Maybe, which you'd be surprised it doesn't take up that much. I've read like 3 pages already. This is going to go faster than I thought.
Well, I'm not saying anything
That's
yet,
true.
so.
Eventually you could speak. So obviously people have traits from multiple houses. Everybody does in the series. Like Harry has the Slytherin thirst to prove himself. Hermione is smart, but she's also a really hard worker. Luna is brave. Lockhart is ambitious. Snape is the bravest man we ever knew. Wormtail is cunning. Ernie Macmillan is an arrogant ass. Cedric is brave and chivalrous, and Dumbledore is clever and cunning.
Yeah.
But you're only in one house, and you can only sleep in one dorm room. Like, that's, at the end of the day, I'm like, you can't sleep in 2 dorms. You can sleep in one dorm.
Yeah.
You can be in one house. You can't be in 2. No. And then I have, like, an arrow. There are things where I'm like, I scrawled on other pages. And then, when that gets into, like, Pottermore and people are like, well, I wasn't sorted into what I thought I'd be sorted as, blah, 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 blah. I think it's important to remember that, like, a lot of us took the sorting test on Pottermore as adults.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is that when you're 11 and you get sorted at Hogwarts, the whole, like, it all comes from, like, British boarding schools where you're in a house and that's because that's where you live, that's where you sleep. And like, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about like boarding school houses. I think that like they do sometimes kind of have personalities to them, but obviously you're not sorted by a magical hat that's like, this is where you belong, but it's like, you're gonna go here because this is where you're gonna sleep. And like, so that's the like logistical point of it. But then also when you're 11, the world is just so much more black and white to you. So you're gonna be more like, well, I'm smart and I want to be in the smart house, or I'm brave and I want to be in the brave house, or my whole family's been in Slytherin, whatever.
The things that you're less well-rounded as a person, and the things that you value are less well-rounded because you're 11.
Yeah. Well, and I think like value is important because, you know, we've talked about this before, that I've always felt it's more about what you value than what you are necessarily.
Yeah.
Because it's like, Hermione might, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to like weigh traits, but you might be able to say that she's more smart than she is brave, but like she values bravery more.
Yeah.
You know? Peter Pettigrew is not brave, but he valued bravery enough to be put in Gryffindor and nowhere else.
Yeah.
He valued bravery more than he valued cunning and ambition, obviously.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
That's basically what I said.
So we're done. Okay. Thanks for listening.
In that paragraph, that's what I said.
Okay.
So then my next point is sort of related, and it's sort of a side note. The idea that the sorting hat takes your choice into account. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know how true that really is. Because people like to talk about, you know, oh, the hat wanted to put Harry in Slytherin. And I'm like, no. Harry brings up Slytherin.
True.
Harry's sitting there going, not Slytherin, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. We don't know what the hat would have done if Harry hadn't been doing that. If
That's true.
Harry had just gone and been like, what's going to happen? Like, the hat might have just been like, Gryffindor. But Harry's like, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. And the hat's like, oh, not Slytherin? But you could be great in Slytherin. Mm-hmm. You know? Because it's like, you could. But you don't want to be in Slytherin. And so Gryffindor. But the hat wouldn't have put Harry in Gryffindor if he didn't think that that's where he should have been.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, the hat might consider your choice, but you don't get to choose.
Yeah, I think the hat considers your choice in as much as, like, I mean, the hat considers what you value.
Yeah.
Because if you know what you value, then, like, you're gonna know your choice.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, Neville begged to be in Hufflepuff.
Yeah, because Neville thought that that's where he belonged.
Yeah,
but
because he thought he was lame. But he valued bravery, you know, and so they had
Yeah.
But.
Well, and like with Neville, you think probably subconsciously he was like, I really want to be in Gryffindor, but I'm not a Gryffindor. And the hat was like, no, you are. Like, that's why you are.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, on Pottermore where they tell that story. They're like, you know, it took so long on Neville, not because the hat couldn't decide, but because the hat was having an argument with Neville.
Yeah.
Because Neville's like, no, I should be in Hufflepuff. And the hat's like, no, you should be in Gryffindor. And Neville's like, no, I'm not worthy. And the hat's like, but you are.
Yeah.
So you're going to turn out to be badass. So shut up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So then I wanted to talk about the test on Pottermore.
Okay.
So the test was written by J.K. Rowling, and I'm very inclined that its decision is final because J.K. Rowling is God. However, you only answer like 5 questions, which I don't think is really an accurate sample of your personality.
And also, we both took it twice.
Yeah, and I've taken it multiple times because there's 25 possible questions. And what questions you get influences the outcome, because I have taken it and gotten every answer. Mm-hmm. And not just necessarily because I was like, I wonder what happens if I say this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you and I both took it twice. And I know, like, for me, when I took it the first time, I was very much answering the questions what I thought the Ravenclaw answer would be.
Uh-huh.
Which involved actually picking things about Merlin. But Merlin was a Slytherin, and so those were the Slytherin answers. And so then I was sorted into Slytherin. And I had told myself it wouldn't bother me, and then I was sad, and I laid around in my Ravenclaw robes all day.
Yeah, I got sorted into Gryffindor, which
just doesn't make any sense.
I know, that's like the last house I feel like I'd be sorted into. Like, we're both Ravenclaws. I feel like both of us Slytherin would be the second house.
But that's actually, as I have grown older, like, I think that Hufflepuff would be my second house. But that's because the things I value have changed.
Yeah.
But when I was 11, I don't know if I valued anything more important than being smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely would have been a Ravenclaw when I was 11.
And that's what I think, too, is that, like, when I was 11, it was like, what do you want? I'd be like, I want to read, go away.
Yeah, I wanna go to class, and I wanna learn, and I don't want anybody to talk to me.
I want everybody else to stop answering wrong and talking over the teacher and not paying attention, and why do you read so slow, and like...
But that's also very, like, Slytherin.
Yeah.
Just our attitude about it.
Yeah.
Which, Slytherin and Gryffindor are, like, the opposites, obviously, that are very emphasized, but a Slytherin and Ravenclaw, I think, are the closest, and then Gryffindor and Hufflepuff are the closest.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Of what, because you think about cunning is very connected to intelligence, and then, like, hardworking is very connected to bravery. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't necessarily call Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw opposites.
No. Because you can be smart and work hard.
Yeah.
But you can also not have, like, raw intelligence, and you can work hard. And you can be really smart and be really lazy.
Yeah.
Which we know all about.
Well, and, like, Luna's a very interesting Ravenclaw, and I feel like Luna is where people get the creativity from, because she's a very different kind of Ravenclaw. She's definitely more creative. And I don't necessarily think about Luna and think, like, oh, she's smart. Like, she is, but it's a different kind of smart.
It's a different type of intelligence.
Yeah, than most other Ravenclaws that we see.
Luna's really the only Ravenclaw you really get to know.
Well, yeah. That's true. I mean, Cho Chang...
But even then, you just know that she's pretty.
Yeah.
And, like, that's kind of it. It's like, she...
Yeah.
Not that she's not, like, a human, and she plays Quidditch, but you're just sort of like, she's just sort of, like, a love interest,
Yeah. I feel like we often characterize Ravenclaws in our heads as Hermione, but Hermione's not a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
But we think of that, we think of, like, oh, you read a lot. And, I mean, not to say that a Ravenclaw isn't like this. Like, I mean, we see people saying to Hermione multiple times, like, why aren't you a Ravenclaw? So, obviously, she is like many Ravenclaws. But that's how we end up thinking of Ravenclaws, because that's what we associate with being smart and valuing, like, schoolwork. But that's not what all Ravenclaws are. No. It's like humans are all multi-dimensional or something.
Wild. I forgot. Yeah. I should have looked at, because, like, when you used to be sorted in the old Pottermore, and you got, like, your prefect talk to you.
Yeah.
Which in the Gryffindor one is like a paragraph, nothing interesting is told. to you because you know everything about it. But like in the Ravenclaw one, they talk about like being creative and like if you want to study cracking eggs open on the floor and what shapes they make, that's cool. You know, and that gets very into like individuality, which is a trait I saw. But then at the same time, you hear about Luna being bullied and people stealing all her stuff. And so you're like,
Yeah.
it had to be Ravenclaw stealing her stuff.
Yeah.
So
That's
Luna
like
was
Luna's
too individual.
Yeah, she was definitely different for a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that she's the Ravenclaw we see the most, and so therefore, like, we associate her personality with Ravenclaw.
It's true. So what we need is a Ravenclaw protagonist.
Yeah.
As the only house that has not had a protagonist.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, we have Luna, and she is the best. But...
I mean, she's great, but still.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people to take the test. There's this girl, and I meant to find, like, her Tumblr or something, but I forgot. She did a bunch of research into Pottermore tests. She had people send them, like, their results and what questions they had and the answers they picked and everything. And so she figured out, like, what weight each answer gives to what house.
Mm-hmm.
And then she made a quiz on, like, a quiz website. And you take all of the you answer all 25 questions, and then it gives you a percentage of each house that you are.
Yeah, I like it when it gives percentages.
And so I like that because you answer all the questions, and it's like Joe wrote all these questions, and I would rather answer all the questions than 5 questions, and then you get to see, you know, your percentages. So like when I took that, even a few years ago, you know, it was like you are 80% Ravenclaw. But then maybe less than that. But then after that, I think I was a Hufflepuff and then Slytherin, and then I was like, you're 2% Gryffindor or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant to like find what that website was. I have it saved somewhere. But if people are like, how do I know what house I am? Which I'm amazed people still ask that question. You're like, haven't you been on the internet? I tell people
Haven't
to go
you been
there.
on the internet in the past 20 years?
Because it's like there are quizzes everywhere. But if you want like something more legit, but some people don't want to create an account on Pottermore.
Well, yeah.
And so it's like you can just go on this website, and I think it's a nice quiz. So then, you know, there are lots of other sorting theories out there having to do with lots of different things. You know, just people posting things on Tumblr or you know, things that it's probably all things posted on Tumblr. But one that I've seen lots of places is like what house you're in based on your Myers-Briggs type. And Myers-Briggs, for those who don't know, is a personality test thing, and it's broken down into letters. And so the first thing is you are an introvert or an extrovert. And then it's, oh man,
I know what our letters are.
I know what my letters are.
It's intuitive or
I know what's the other one.
Hold on, I'll bring it up.
I know, I'm like,
we're intuitive. Sensing or intuition.
Okay.
So then thinking or feeling, and then judging or perceiving.
Okay.
So we're both INTJ, which I assume in a, like, which Hogwarts house are you based on your Myers-Briggs, that would not be Ravenclaw, that would be Slytherin.
Actually, the most recent thing I saw, it was in Ravenclaw.
Okay.
Because it had Slytherins as extroverts.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So I think almost all the introverts were either in Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, and then the
Just
extroverts
because
were all in Gryffindor.
Isn't, like, the name of, like, INTJ is, like, the mastermind or something like that?
Maybe.
Because they all have, like, titles to them. And I know that I see a lot, Oh, I guess it's the architect.
Yeah, the architect. But most presidents are INTJs.
Yeah. I remember I see a lot that Moriarty is INTJ. Which makes sense. When people categorize characters.
Luckily, we're too lazy to take over the world.
Yeah. Lucky for the world.
Maybe presidents are ENTJs. That would make more sense.
That would make more sense.
You have to talk to people. Anyways, so that's one you see a lot. And a lot of it, usually it's like the introverts are divided between Hufflepuff and that's the biggest sort of divide. But then, like Ravenclaws don't have feelings, usually.
I remember the first time I took a Myers-Briggs.
Did you?
And I got INTJ. Because I remember texting, like, you and Mom was like, that's what your sister and I both are. But on the one that I took, the like description of it just started with people don't like you. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Cool. Now I know. So that's why no one listens to this podcast, because we're INTJs.
No one likes you.
Yeah.
So we're like, I know all the things. I have more to say, but I read this thing today when I was not working, and it was like people like combinations of houses, like in friendships, and the one that I liked was the Ravenclaw Slytherin one, and it was like, this is the dream team. Like, people will take over the world.
Yeah.
It was like, they will hack into computer systems for fun. It was just really funny to read, as it was like, and none of the other ones were nearly that funny. It was like, Hufflepuffs will help Ravenclaws connect with people. And I'm like, no, let's take over the world.
Yeah, we both are living with Hufflepuffs. That's why we haven't taken over the world.
That's probably
They're holding
why
us back.
Hufflepuffs are like, they're there. They're there.
They're there. Care about humans.
Care about the humans. But the girl I share an office with is a Slytherin, so we yell at people that aren't in the room with us a lot. She actually, I've never worked with someone who cussed at their computer as much as she does. It's great. I love it. She talks to herself and she swears at the computer and yells at people in her email.
Fun.
And I'm like, you tell them. And she's like, what do I tell this person? And I'm like, you tell them that they should be punished. That's like the Slytherin in me coming out, being like, they should be punished. But I'm very into like justice. Anyways, other things I wrote down when I was going through Pinterest, like things that sum them up really easily, was like Gryffindor, I want to be. Slytherin, I will be. Ravenclaw, I could be. And Hufflepuff, I try to be. Mm-hmm. Or the other one, I like this one. Gryffindor is I'll die for you. Mm-hmm. Slytherin, I'll kill for you. Ravenclaw, I'll save you. And Hufflepuff, I'll die with you.
Okay.
And then I printed this one out today, and I thought this was really cool. Something to do with Potter from Tumblr, but I found it on Pinterest. And they said it's about qualities you value, but it's also how you perceive magic. So I thought this was really interesting. So Gryffindors perceive magic as a weapon. Gryffindors tend to excel in aggressive forms of magic, like offensive and defensive spells, and they're good at dueling. But a true Gryffindor knows that the power is a responsibility, so they must always use their powers to stand up for what's right. They are the sword of righteousness, which makes them as good at defense against the dark arts as they are at combat magic. Hufflepuffs believe that magic is a gift, and the best gifts are to be given away. Hufflepuffs would naturally abhor the idea of jealously guarding magic or using it to hurt someone else. So Hufflepuffs share their magic to benefit Muggles, like the Fat Friar who protected the Overlooked. like Newt Scamander with his creatures, or to oppose those who would use magic to torment and bully, like the Hufflepuffs who stood with the DA and the Battle of Hogwarts. Slytherins are the opposite. They believe their magic is a treasure that they have been entrusted to protect. The Slytherin fascination with purity, with advantage, with cunning and secrecy, all of which were perverted by the Death Eaters, comes from the idea that people with magic in their veins have been given something special that is their duty to protect at all costs. And perhaps they aren't entirely wrong. Power in the wrong hands can be dangerous, and power interfering at will with Muggles' affairs is a gross presumption that could turn the course of history. Though the series shows some of the worst that Slytherin can be evil, it's not a natural Slytherin tendency. Cautious is. Ravenclaws believe that magic is an art form, one that is beautiful and should be appreciated and studied for its own sake. If wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure, then asking what magic is for is useless. It's more important to immerse oneself in magic for its own sake. Ravenclaws push the boundaries of magic to see if they can, hence Hermione's spell experiment on the DA coins being dubbed a Ravenclaw quality. But like Luna Lovegood in the pursuit of extraordinary creatures, they can also be content to plumb the depths of what already exists.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting...
Yeah, that's cool.
That was a cool sort of thing.
Yeah, I like that.
So this is my favorite sorting theory, aside from my own. And it is by the Sorting Hat Chats on Tumblr. And they talk about you having a primary and secondary house. Although they say that you shouldn't think of as one is more important than the other. That's just what they called them. And so your primary house is why a person does things, their motivations, moralities, and priorities. Your secondary house is how you approach the world as a person interacting with it and how you make your own way. It's how you problem solve. So then I printed out a bunch of information about this because I think this is really cool, and I spent like days reading everything about this probably a few years ago. So yeah, your primary house defines your why and your secondary defines your how. And so, you know, they did their own sort of research and stuff. So I'm going to read about the primaries first.
Okay.
So Gryffindor primaries trust their moral intuitions and have a need and a drive to live by them. They feel what's right in their gut, and that matters and guides them. If they don't listen to and act on that, it feels immoral. We call Gryffindor's morality felt, but that doesn't mean they're all impetuous, emotional Hellions. Or is it Hellions? I don't know. Gryffindors can still be intelligent, deliberate creatures who weigh their decisions and moralities carefully. Reasoning, intellectualizing, and debate can be support for a Gryffindor's felt morality, but those things can never make a fully satisfying morality in themselves. Some things are just wrong, no matter what pretty words you use to explain them. Gryffindor primaries have a constructed system that they test their decisions against before they feel comfortable calling something right. This system might be constructed by them, or it might have been taught to them as children, or it might have been discovered by them some point later in life, but it gives them a way to frame the world and a confidence in their ability to interact with it morally. Ravenclaws do not lack an intuitive sense of morality or gut feeling about things, but they distrust those instincts and have a need to ignore or to dig down deep and dissect those internal moral impulses. Living within their built moral system is as important to a Ravenclaw as to a Gryffindor. It's the source of the morality that differs between them, what they trust. Hufflepuff primaries value people, all people. They value community. They bond to groups rather than solely individuals. They make their decisions off who is in the most need and who is the most vulnerable and who they can help. They value fairness because every person is a person and feel best when they give everyone that fair chance. Even directly wronged, a Hufflepuff will often give someone a second or fifth chance. That doesn't mean all Hufflepuffs are inherently tolerant human beings, any more than all Gryffindors are inherently good moral creatures. Hufflepuffs tend to believe that all people deserve some type of kindness, decency, or consideration from them, but they can define person however they want, excluding individuals or even whole groups. Slytherin primaries are fiercely loyal to the people they care for most. Slytherin is the place where you'll make your real friends. They prioritize individual loyalties and find their moral core in protecting and caring for the people they're closest to. Slytherin's reputation for ambition comes from the visibility of this promotion of the self and their important people. Ambition is something you can find in all four houses. Slytherin's is just the one that looks the most obviously selfish. Because their morality system of me and mine first is fairly narrow in scope, Slytherins often construct a secondary morality system to deal with situations that are not addressed by their loyalty system. Ta-da.
Okay.
What do you think your primary is, Shannon?
I don't know. That was a lot of information.
Okay. I'm not done.
Okay, I know.
Pages more.
I know.
So I think
You're
it's
always going to be more prepared for this podcast than I am.
That ties into secondaries.
Ooh.
Your secondary is your how you problem solve.
I do want to say, before I forget, that this reminds me a lot of astrology, which I don't know a lot about, but, like, you have, like, your sign and then, like, a secondary sign, depending on, like, when you were born.
If you were born within, like, 5 days of another sign, it's said that you can have both traits.
Yeah. But there's something else about, like, I don't know, the stars on the day you were born. Or
probably, like the planet is in the 5th house and weird things like that.
I don't know about that. But I remember that I had a friend in college who was really into it, and she, like, explained it all to us, and I don't remember what, like, my second thing was, but it was interesting. You know, it's all just various personality things.
Yeah.
For some reason, we really like to categorize our personalities.
We do. Human beings like to understand things. It's probably those Ravenclaws being like, we should make a test for this. You know, it'd be great if we gathered some information.
Yeah.
So your secondary is your how.
Uh-huh.
It's how you problem solve.
Okay.
These descriptions are shorter. Gryffindor secondaries charge. They meet the world head on and challenge it to do its worst. Gryffindor secondaries are honest, brash, and bold in pursuit of the things they care about. Known for their bravery, it is almost a moral matter to stay true to themselves in any situation that they're in. Ravenclaw secondaries plan. They collect information, they strategize, they have tools, they run hypotheticals and try to plan ahead for things that might come up. They build things of varying degrees of practicality and actual usefulness that they can use later, whether that's an emergency supply pack, a vast knowledge of Renaissance artistic techniques and supplies, or a series of lists and contingency plans. They feel less at home in improvisation and more comfortable planning ahead and taking the time to be prepared. Hufflepuff secondaries toil. Their strength comes from their consistency and the integrity of their method. They are hard workers. They build habits and systems for themselves and accomplish things by keeping at them. They have a steadiness that can make them the linchpin, though not usually the leader, of a community. While stereotyped as liking people and being kind, and this vision is perhaps a common reality, a Hufflepuff secondary can also easily be a caustic, introverted misanthrope who runs on hard work alone. Slytherin secondaries improvise. They're the most adaptive secondary, finding their strength in responding quickly to whatever a situation throws at them. They improvise differently than the Gryffindor secondary, far more likely to try coming at situations from different angles than to try strong-arming them. They might describe themselves as having different faces for different people in different situations, dropping them and being just themselves only when they're relaxing or feeling safe.
Okay.
So those are secondaries. And there's still more. But I'm going to talk about my husband for a moment.
Okay.
Because he's a good example because my personality is far more complicated than his. So
Yeah.
Rob's primary would be a Gryffindor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rob has a very strong morality, and it's not necessarily about community like a Hufflepuff's is. You know, Rob is very
Well, we should say that,
introverted.
like, Rob is a Hufflepuff.
Rob is a
in, like,
Hufflepuff. Rob is-
traditional sorting, I
Rob
guess.
is like, he could be the poster child for Hufflepuffs.
Yes.
He works hard and he is nice and he is loyal and he just cares and he wants everything to be fair. Like, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an important point, Shannon. Good point. So he's very, like, Rob is a Hufflepuff. Like, he was born
Yeah.
a Hufflepuff. He will die a Hufflepuff. His whole life in between will have been Hufflepuff. I experienced grad school with this man, and it was horrible for me. And this is a good example. So, like, Rob is a perfectionist, which probably is, you know, probably a lot of Hufflepuffs have this, because you want to work hard until you get it right. So Rob would give up sleeping or eating or feeling joy in order to get his homework done when we were in college and when he was in grad school. And I can literally not understand this and how he can possibly care so much. Because
Yeah.
to me, that just doesn't make sense. Like, I would much rather go to sleep or eat or, you know, watch a movie than do my homework. Now, some of that comes from a different type of intelligence. Rob works really hard and does really well, and I can walk into a room and take a test and get a better grade than he does. And
Yeah.
he hates that. When we were in college, Rob has beautiful handwriting, which is weird, but it's great. And we would take classes together, and he would take these really detailed notes, and I would not pay attention.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like to learn, but I think, and I've seen these and things, they're like, Ravenclaws want to learn what they want to learn about.
Yeah.
Because everything else seems like a waste of time. I could be learning about that thing I like.
Yeah.
So in these classes that were really boring, I would not pay attention, and he would take these great notes, and he would study, you know, all night before a test. Not all night, but he would study. So then the hour before the test, I would read his notes twice. We would go in, and I would get a better grade. And he would always say, I'm never letting you look at my notes again. But I always knew that he was lying because he was a Hufflepuff, and he would never deny me his notes, because that would be mean. So anyways, Rob is a very wonderful person. I love him, and I married him and stuff. He takes care of me. He cooks, because Hufflepuffs and food.
Yeah.
He is not a good finder, and he hates that. He hates the whole finder thing. He just is like, that's not a real Hufflepuff thing. Anyways, but so Rob's primary would be a Gryffindor morality, because, you know, he has a very strong morality, and things that are wrong are wrong. And it's not necessarily about community like a Hufflepuff's would be. You know, a community is fine, but he's not necessarily being like, oh, these people are the most in need, they're the most vulnerable, this is who I can help. It's just that, like, this is wrong, you know. Wrong things are wrong, and right things are right, you know. He's got this strong moral code. But his secondary is his Hufflepuffness. He toils. He is a hard worker. He builds habits and systems. And I really liked, they talked about their steadiness can make them the linchpin, if they're not the leader, of a community. in grad school, very often, my husband was the center of the graduate student unit because he knew what was going on, because he would contact the teachers. He took care of the things, and by his third year, he was like basically running the department. Not because he wanted to run the department, but because he was this central core of like, this is how everyone knows what's going on, because Rob knows, because Rob will take care of it. There would be all sorts of weird things that people would call and text him to be like, Rob, I don't know about this thing. And he's like, it's this, or I will find out because that is my duty to my community. That's where like his community comes in, is like, he's this hard worker, and he gets pushed into a community role because he's so good at it, because he works hard and he knows the things and he's got his habits and he's ready. He's great. I love him. So in order to analyze my very complicated brain, we get into the specific thing that this group has in theirs, and they called what they call burning. A burned house happens when one of your 4 primaries loses something intrinsically stabilizing to their system without losing the feeling of how important their priorities are. And it can come from trauma, disillusionment, exhaustion, or just life.
Yeah.
So a burned Gryffindor primary are Gryffindors who've lost faith in their internal moral compass. Doing what right is still just as important, but they don't know how to know what's right. Many will find a new system to adopt and live by, but this new system is never as comfortable as their original system. Burned Ravenclaws have not lost belief in their morality system. They've lost faith in their ability to find a system of truth. Sent into a spiral by realizations of the impossibility of objectivity, they fall. But they do say this is the least sustainable of the burned primaries because a fallen Ravenclaw will find and build themselves a new system.
Yeah.
Burned Hufflepuffs have decided it's too hard, impractical, or ultimately futile to care about everyone. And so they have shrunk their circle by changing it from a system that defaults with I care about you to a system that says I cannot care about everyone, so I only care about my people. And so a burned Hufflepuff primary looks a lot like a Slytherin primary. A burned Puff wants to care about the world, but they just can't. A burned Slytherin primary has gone from an inner circle of a few to an inner circle of one themselves. They have decided that having any people is no longer an option. They're worried about those people getting hurt, or they're worried about losing those people, or being hurt themselves, etc.
Okay.
So, I feel that I am a burned Hufflepuff primary. Because I love the idea of saving the world. And I like to take care of people. But I deal with depression. And I have my whole life. And I think, also because we moved so much as a kid, I could never build a community.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about community. Because I was like, well, we didn't care about communities because we didn't have one.
But that was the difference. I wanted a community.
Yeah.
I wanted one. And I felt like I needed one. And I would attempt to make one, which is why I often ended up with horrible friends. But then my friends would be horrible. And, it was like, it was too hard.
Yeah.
It was too hard. So that's why I really felt like I was a burned Hufflepuff. Because there was reading about the Slytherin primary, kind of made sense to me. But then when I read about the burned, it was like, no, because I would love to care about everybody and save the world. But I don't have the energy for that.
It's interesting because I almost feel like that's me too, but I feel like there was I don't remember a point before that. Like, I feel like now, yeah, I want to care about everyone. But I mean, I definitely have, like, core people that I'm like, these are the people that are important. And I'm like, I'd like to care about the rest of the world. But I don't feel like there was a point before that feeling, you know?
I would say it was much more likely you are actually a Slytherin primary.
Yeah.
Because you have your core group, and that's who you really care about. And you can look at the rest of the world and be like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah.
But not like, and I really wish I could do something about it. Like, even you can even have that thought.
Yeah, but I'm just lazy.
Yeah, but you're not going to. But you don't have a feeling. Part of it is a feeling like something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like with me, it's sort of, it's having depression in a way. It's feeling like I am lacking something, like I'm lacking this community that I never had. So it's not like something happened and I lost it, but I feel like I am missing something.
Yeah.
You would get rid of your core group of people and be like, oh, well.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go to McDonald's now.
Yeah.
Do you have, I don't know what else, primary-wise, because I don't think you're a Gryffindor primary.
No. If I was going to be another primary, it'd be Ravenclaw, I think.
Do you think you'd be more a Ravenclaw primary or a Slytherin primary?
I don't know. I found the page so I can look at the description.
Okay, you think about it.
I mean, I'm definitely a Ravenclaw secondary.
Same. I'm a Ravenclaw secondary. Yeah. That's just...
Planning. Sounds good.
Planning. It's like when you see people who don't plan and you're like, how are you alive?
Yeah, like, what do you do? It's just so... I remember, like, in college, when there'd be those times, like, I'm just hanging out with my friends at night. Like, we'd just be walking around campus or something. Campus, I said that weird. But it would bother me so much that there wasn't a specific goal in mind.
Yeah.
And I'd say something where I'm like every once in a while I'd be like, okay, but what are we doing? Like, because I was like, we need to be going somewhere. We need to be doing something specific. And I remember once, like, doing that. And my friend Angie was like, of course you would say that, Shannon. And I'm like, yes, because we're not doing anything. We're just wandering aimlessly through the world. Like,
but if someone was like, we're just going to go wander aimlessly.
Yeah, if that was, like, the specific goal at the beginning.
Then that's the specified activity, and that's okay. But you need to specify an activity. It can't just be like, we're wandering till we think of something better to do.
Yeah, because it would always be things like that, where it's like, oh, we could do this, but no one would decide.
And you're like, we have to make a plan.
And I try to decide, but I can't decide because it's a group thing. So I'm like, this is my choice, but everyone have an opinion and they wouldn't. And then I'm also, sometimes I either have a really strong opinion or I have no opinion. And that is my biggest problem in life.
I know.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
You should try to convince Shannon to do something that she doesn't want to do. There is legitimately no harder task in the world. Because Shannon doesn't want to do something, she's not going to do it. And if you try to make her do it, she will ruin your life.
Yeah.
I have tried to get Shannon to get out of bed, and it has ended in screaming matches. And her crying and me storming off downstairs to be like, Mom, Shannon is the worst child in the world. And Mom's like, why did you try to get her out of bed? Like, because she needs to get up.
Yeah, well, you did it wrong.
I did it wrong. And that's what my mom would say. And she'd be like, I have a very specific way of getting Shannon out of bed. And then she'd go.
She put my glasses on my face. She just did everything for me. Because then she'd, like, lift me out of bed. Yeah. I don't know how I get out of bed now. It's very hard.
I have, like, Rob's, like, poking me, being like, sweetheart, sweetheart. Which I get in, I mean, I have the same sort. I get mad at Rob when he's trying to get me out of bed. I know I need to get up, but I don't like being told to do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'll do it on my own.
Well, I think a lot of people have that feeling of like,
yeah,
I was going to do it, but then you told me to do it.
Yeah.
And now I'm not going to do it. Anyways.
What do you think your primary is, Sharon?
I don't know.
You don't have to decide.
I just can't decide.
There are whole pages about each one.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, not right now, but eventually, to click on the Ravenclaw one and the Slytherin ones and just go in and read all about them.
Yeah, because I'm looking at them like, I mean, I feel like I have, my own, like, system of morality, which is kind of what the Ravenclaw one talks about. And then I feel like I have my, like, group of people that I prioritize above everyone else, and that I look selfish, which is what it says. But then, like, I don't know, the wording in the Slytherin one is, like, fiercely loyal, and I'm like, I don't know if I feel fiercely loyal to people. Because true. I am, like, if people, like, if someone does something that, like, I disagree with enough, like, I mean, not necessarily that I'm just like, well, they're not my friend anymore, but, like, I'm not like, well, we can make it work or whatever. I don't know.
You're like, well, so much for them.
Yeah, like, well, oh well.
So the last level...
There's more.
There's more.
Okay.
Is models and performances.
Mm-hmm.
So a model, as they call it, is a place you can live. It's not as intrinsic to you as your primary or secondary, but it can be hugely important. So it can be like, they don't have to really describe it like super concisely. It can further the goals of your primary or help you be more effective in your secondary. It can be what you want to spend all of your time working toward, as long as your primary isn't being threatened. So you can drop your model or models. You can have multiple, but that doesn't mean you ever want to. You can model a primary or a secondary or both. So, like, what I said for me is, like, so I'm a burnt Hufflepuff primary with a Ravenclaw secondary. Mm-hmm. And I model a Ravenclaw primary. That's like the system that I have chosen as a way to get by since my Hufflepuff system is broken.
Okay.
So it's like, since my Hufflepuff primary is burned, I model a Ravenclaw primary as sort of, that's my way of moving through. I've constructed a system to work inside of as a way to frame the world. And then after that, they talk about, like, a performance is a toolkit. That's a way you can act. That might be like, you are having a party and you don't like hosting parties and you perform a Hufflepuff primary in order to seem like a caring, empathetic host.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the sort of thing that it's like everyone does that,
Yeah.
But it might just be something that, you do all the time, and it says, like, a Gryffindor primary, Gryffindor secondary who likes science might develop a Ravenclaw secondary performance to seem more appropriate in that social context. So then, I said, I was like, I think, a thing I like to perform is I will perform a Slytherin primary because I don't know why, but I like the idea of people being afraid of me.
Yeah.
It's like it's a power thing because I want to be in charge and that's part of it. But so, like, I will act as though, and it's probably also another level of defense mechanism, act as though I don't care. about
Yeah.
anybody and anything, and then I'm cruel and mean.
But you care a lot.
But I care a lot. Which I wrote down. I like to pretend I'm selfish and cruel as a defense mechanism. And then I wrote, goodness, I'm complicated.
So I feel like I'm almost the opposite there. I feel like I perform Hufflepuff more
Okay.
because that's socially acceptable.
Yeah. It's
And I
true.
act like I care about. I remember, I have like 2 stories to tell about Michael, who co-hosts Speak Beastie on MuggleNet with me, with a lot of other people, but Michael's on it sometimes. One time Michael said, I don't remember if he said this on an episode or like after we started recording or something, so maybe it's in an episode somewhere, but he said about me, she likes you, but she hates humanity, so she's having a war with herself.
I
And
think I
wrote that
remember
down.
hearing that.
Yes, I had to write that down because I was like, yeah, but like that's just so good. But so recently Michael and a lot of other people from MuggleNet were here for MuggleNet Live on September 1st, and we went to Toothsome at City Walk at Universal, and we had all these like several conversations with Dr. Professor Penelope, who is like a character who walks around Toothsome, and the character is like she owns the place and she opened it to help track down her missing parents. And Michael asked her at one point, like, have you found your parents? And she said no, but you know, she's hopeful, and she said like it gets kind of lonely, but she has Jacques, who's like her robot butler. And then I was like, and all of us. And then she like started to, you know, pretend to cry, and it was really funny, and you know. And then Michael said to me, he was like, see, you act like you don't care, but then you say these sweet things. And I'm like, but I said it because it was part of the bit. Like, that's just how it felt to me. I'm like, I don't feel like that was like a real sweet thing.
Okay, but I just had a thought, Shannon.
Yes.
For the Slytherin primary, it says, because their morality system of me and mine first is fairly narrow, Slytherins often construct a secondary morality system to deal with situations that are not addressed by their loyalty system.
Okay.
So if you decided that Slytherin was your primary,
Yeah.
Ravenclaw could be your secondary primary as a like, when it doesn't have to deal with these are the 4 people I like.
Yeah.
What
that
do I
would make
do?
sense.
Which, so then it would also probably be like, and then you also model that, you know, that you could call that your model as well.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, performance, it's like everybody does that a little. Like,
I mean, yeah.
that's just life. You're like, okay, I have to kind of act like this right now. You know, that's just, yeah. So that's the Sorting Hat chats, and I encourage
We spent
5
half the episode on it.
I know, I really love it, and I encourage the 5 people who listen to this to go look it up. I just Googled, because I was trying to find it, burned Hufflepuff, and it took me right there. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting, in-depth, you know, way to
Yeah.
dig deep into yourself. So the last thing I had was Ilvermorny,
Of
which
course.
we know very little about.
Yeah.
And so we can't
And we
really,
not only know little about the school, but like those houses, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you're about to talk about it, are very simple compared to.
yeah, well, what we know, you know, is very similar. So it's
And vague.
and vague. So it's like Horned Serpent favors scholars and represents the mind. Wampus favors warriors and represents the body. Pukwudgie favors healers and represents the heart.
Yeah.
And Thunderbird favors adventurers and represents the soul.
It's very interesting because Immediately everyone tried to match these up with the Hogwarts houses, which immediately I was like, stop doing that.
And then Joe was like, no.
Like, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And J.K. Rowling came out and was like, they do not match up. And people have tried, because when I was looking, people tried to like figure out if most Slytherins are put into this house or whatever. And they couldn't figure it out. And actually, most studies I saw showed that they're just the least populated house was Wampus's. Like the least amount of people were just sorted as that. Shannon and I are both Wampuses as well as Ravenclaws. And Ravenclaw Wampus is the rarest combination.
Nice.
From everything I've read or heard. Shannon and I were at a convention.
Are really weird.
And they asked Wampuses to raise their hand and 3 people did. So yeah, we're really weird. So we're warriors. So,
yeah, which, like, that's not the one I thought. Oh, yeah, warrior and body. Like,
no.
Us weaklings.
Because you would think, like, as a Ravenclaw especially, I think you're going into this being like, well, I'm going to be a horned serpent.
Yeah.
Because that represents the mind in scholars.
Yeah.
That's really the one that has the closest equivalent, or seems like it does.
Yeah.
Like, the mind, scholars, well, that's Ravenclaws.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really surprised to be put in Wampus's. But so, you know, when I was looking at things, it was like the Ilvermorny sorting asks a different sort of question and it defines you differently. Mm-hmm. You know, the Hogwarts houses are adjectives and the Ilvermorny houses are nouns.
Yeah.
And one thing I read said, Ilvermorny is what you are and Hogwarts is what you want to be.
Sure.
So that difference between like what you are and what you value. And another thing I said, and it sort of reminded me of the Sorting Hat chats, was it was like you, it's like, the best way I can think about it is being like, okay, we're Ravenclaw Wampuses. And so it was like Ravenclaws are intelligent, creative, and clever and whatever. But define themselves, you know, as with their Wampus traits is by what they do, you know, body.
Yeah.
What they do with their intelligence and their creativity. You know, it's worthless to just
that's very
be like, I'm smart and I sat in my room. Like, that, you know, what's the purpose in that? That has no purpose. Of course, I should have printed out that sheet because that was really interesting. And so it was that sort of like, you know, so it was like, defining yourself by Horned Serpent, what you think, Wampus, what you do. I think Pukwudgie was what you feel, and I don't remember what Thunderbird was. But that's sort of like, you know, taking more your sort of actions into verbs, nouns and verbs, whereas the Hogwarts houses are adjectives. So, but yeah, we know very little about, you know, we only know a couple characters that we actually know. We only know a couple of their houses. So, you know, we don't really, we're just like, they exist. And these are the few things we know. And we've all speculated about what it all means. But, you know, at least, you know, for me, I do think like, you know, I will fight for what I think.
Yeah.
And I know that I am right.
Yeah.
But, you know, that gets into, like, warriors. It's like, no, I'm not going to go fight you with a sword, though that would be awesome. But I will fight you with words.
Yeah.
I will tell you how stupid you are. And you're wrong.
All right. Performing Slytherin.
Yeah. I can still hate people.
Yeah.
Because I want to love people, but they make it so hard.
I know, they do.
And you know,
are just the worst.
If you think of it as like value, I value intelligence, and I think people are stupid.
Yeah.
Not all people are stupid. Most people aren't stupid. Some people are stupid.
Okay.
I'm sure none of those people listen to us, because if they listen to us, then they must be great. I was like, maybe we should talk less about how awful people are, because theoretically we're talking to other people.
Yeah, we don't mean those people.
They're
Those
great.
people are great. Yeah.
They're the best people.
Yeah.
So that's...
Is that all your notes?
That's all my notes. I read all my notes.
There was something that I thought of at the beginning, and I should have just said it then. But, because now it's not really that relevant anymore. But I thought of when Ron says that, like, there hasn't been an evil wizard who didn't come out of Slytherin. Like, basically, yeah, every evil person was Slytherin. Which already is like, that doesn't make any sense. Because not everyone went to Hogwarts, first of all. But then, I was thinking about how, like, Ron says that, and that's one of the first things we know about Slytherin and just about, like, sorting in general. Like, that's just how Ron describes Slytherin, is like, well, they're evil.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't say they're all evil. He says, like, every evil person was in Slytherin. But I thought about it, and I was like, but then J.K. Rowling spends the rest of the series kind of destroying that, because, I mean, Quirrell wasn't a Slytherin. He was a Ravenclaw, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And he's the first bad guy. I mean, obviously Voldemort's the big bad guy, and he was a Slytherin. But, like, first secondary bad guy was not a Slytherin. Snape was a Slytherin, and then, he's a whole other debate. But Peter Pettigrew was a Gryffindor.
Yep.
And he's a bad guy. He is an antagonist. And that's kind of the most important one. Because Quirrell, you don't learn in the books, was a Ravenclaw, I don't think. But
I don't think so.
Peter being a Gryffindor is, like, important because all the Marauders were Gryffindors. And then he betrayed them. And, I wouldn't necessarily be like Peter Pettigrew is evil, but, like, he's not a good guy. He kind of caused everything.
Yeah. And few people are really evil at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Voldemort is evil. Bellatrix is evil. But,
yeah.
Like, it's that these ideas that they have and their moralities, whatever, Voldemort has twisted. And, it's being racist in a way. I mean, it's exactly what it is. It's being racist. It's like you're raised racist, and it's hard to stop being racist when everyone around you is racist.
And that's, like, Malfoy's whole thing, is he was raised this way, so he doesn't know any other way.
Yeah.
And even his parents, this is just the way it is. And by the end, they kind of start to realize, like, oh, maybe we were wrong. But it takes them a long time.
I mean, Draco, in the end, doesn't want to murder people.
Yeah.
And his parents, I think, in the end, it's not so much we were wrong, but Draco is more important to us than killing the people. Like, I'm not willing to sacrifice my son for this cause.
Yes. And so that's, like, they're characters who in the beginning seemed like very black and white and kind of like, okay, they're bad guys, but then by the end it's kind of like, okay, maybe, I mean, they're like bad guys, but they're not bad guys.
They're bad
like
people.
Wreck-It Ralph.
But they're not, they're bad people, but they're not evil. I mean, theoretically,
they're
Lucius Malfoy has killed some people, but, like,
Draco is really who I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
like,
Draco's like, I don't want to kill people, and I don't want to kill the people I went to school with, and, like,
I
don't want to hug Voldemort.
God. Yeah, so it's just like, Ron says this line at the beginning of the book, and it kind of paints Slytherins for the rest of the series, but we learn that is not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And, like, we don't know a lot about Durmstrang, but as far as I know, there aren't houses, and Grindelwald went to Durmstrang. Yeah. And he was pretty evil.
True.
But so, like, I don't know, you can't just, like, paint him in such a black and white light as the house is. I've said black and white so much.
Well, and I think that's, when I started with, like, their people have a lot of assumptions, and you hear a lot of that from the characters in the books that are, like, and mostly about Slytherin, because Slytherin and Gryffindor are the houses you experience the most, but they talk about how the Slytherins are evil.
Yeah.
And it's like, they don't have to. Slughorn is not evil. He never comes across evil at all. He's ambitious, and he's ambitious in a different way. He doesn't want to be Minister of Magic, but he likes knowing the Minister of Magic. He likes collecting these people, and he doesn't care that, Harry's mom was Muggle-born. Like, that's not, she's still impressive, and that's, more important to him.
Yeah. And, we talked earlier about, like, how the houses are a lot more important when you're 11. Because that's when they actually come into play. And, like, I mean, in book, like, obviously to us fans, they're very important. Like, they're much more important than they would be to the characters. But I think that really shows up in Fantastic Beasts, where it's like, I mean, we all know Newt's a Hufflepuff, and that's great. And we know Tina and Queenie's houses, though I do not remember them off the top of my head. Ilvermorny houses, obviously. But, like, that's just... Yes. It's just not important.
No. Well, and even the adults in Harry Potter...
Yeah.
We know a lot of their houses because, like, it's told... Whether a character actually states it or just we found out later... because we all wanted that information, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it only really matters a little bit because they're teaching at the school with these houses.
Yeah.
So, of course, like, you're gonna care more about, like, your childhood house and, like, you're in charge of that house. But that's, it's like... it should be just, like, friendly school rivalry. I mean, this is how the sports teams are split up.
Yeah, or like fraternities and sororities, like, and maybe you go to get a job and the person who's hiring you, they're a Ravenclaw, I'm a Ravenclaw, and you have that in common. But, like, the adults in Harry Potter don't walk around talking about people's houses, and, like, they don't appear to be forming friendships because of it.
Yeah. It's just, like, the kids really care about it.
Yeah,
because they're in the moment.
And, Sirius and Snape hate each other since they were kids, and they still hate each other as adults. And, they're in different houses, and that helps color the house thing, too.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where, like, sometimes when you hate someone, it's really easy to be like, well, they're a Slytherin. Because that's just something that you can pick out that's less nuanced. And so... like, I feel like that's kind of what happens with Sirius and Snape a little bit, is it's like, well, he's just this completely different thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, is he really? Maybe you both are just idiots.
And you should grow up or die, as the case may be.
Yeah, grow up or die. That's the lesson of the Harry Potter series. You heard it here first, folks. Shall we move on? Because we've been recording for a long time.
Probably. Shannon, what happened this month in pop culture history?
Yeah, so I went for October. We are recording at the end of September, but this will be released in October.
It's a good... Man, we haven't recorded in a while.
Yeah, we didn't release a September episode, but we will release this one in October at some point. You are hearing it now in October. So I... found something that opened for the first time. I mean, it opened in October. It hasn't, like, reopened since then. Epcot opened on October 1st, 1982. So we're recording on September 29th. So in 2 days, it's going to be the 35th anniversary of Epcot opening, which is cool.
It is cool.
So Epcot is a theme park at Walt Disney World. It's one of the 4 parks. It was the second one to open, And it's like, well, so Epcot stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. And it's based on, well, kind of based on this design that Walt Disney had for a city. So Epcot could also stand for Experimental Prototype City of Tomorrow. And it was like, I mean, Walt Disney had a lot of ideas for innovative technology. The monorail is a big example of that. He wanted monorails everywhere. And that's kind of what a lot of what he was doing in the theme parks and a lot of what he had planned for this city was like, this is going to be, I mean, an experimental prototype of this technology, and then eventually the rest of the world will incorporate it. So he had this whole city planned of really cool technology, and, you know, it would have housed like thousands of people. And then he died, and Walt Disney Company was like, that sounds like a lot of work. And we really can't do it without Walt. Because he really wanted to do it. And we, like, that's just, like, that sounds really difficult. Let's just turn it into a theme park. But they kind of used the idea of Epcot to create, I was reading about this, and I thought this was, I had read about this in a book that now I don't remember the name of. I'd read about it a little bit, and I read about it a little bit more today. They kind of used the idea of Epcot to, like, pitch to the state of Florida, like, hey, this is why you should give us our own city. So that's, like, how they kind of got the funding and permission to create the Reedy Creek Improvement District, and technically the cities of Bay Lake and Reedy Creek, which is now Lake Buena Vista. And so they have, like, technically Disney owns towns, and because of that, Disney has its own legislature and government. Like, Walt Disney World is a town, a city. So they kind of used Epcot as like, hey, this is a really cool thing we might do. And Florida was like, oh, cool, here's money. And then they didn't actually build Epcot the way that they were gonna, because that was a lot of work. But now Walt Disney World can do whatever they want. I mean, not whatever they want, but they can do a lot of things they want because they are a city. So they don't need to, like, get permission from Orlando because they are Lake Buena Vista. So you'll notice that if you've, like, never been to Disney and then, like, you go to Disney and you start noticing, like, the address is not Orlando, it's Lake Buena Vista. Lake Buena Vista is Disney. So yeah, and so then Epcot ended up opening as it's partially Future World, and then it's partially the World Showcase. So Future World is kind of the technology stuff. The main, like, focal point of the whole park is Spaceship Earth, where you learn about, now it very much focuses on, like, advancements of communication. There's Mission Space, where you know, quote unquote, go to Mars. There's Test Track, which is like this car racing game.
But it's like prototype cars.
Yes. And then, like, Innoventions, which isn't a ride. It's this, like, series of kind of like, it's all these little technological things that you kind of get to try out, like virtual reality stuff, and, you know, like, build your own roller coaster, but it's kind of like this virtual reality thing. That's what's in Innoventions, although Innoventions has changed a lot, and
it's mostly closed.
Yes, because nobody went in there. And then you have the World Showcase, which is the other half of the park, and it is each section of it is a different country, and so you can kind of experience that country in a way. And everyone who works in each country is actually from that country, which is very cool. So that is what Epcot became. It is not the prototype city that Walt Disney wanted. It's a very nice park, though.
Walt Disney also wanted kids to be able to play on the grass.
Well, now they can.
The fake grass.
Because
in
Disney
Magic Kingdom
discovered fake grass, and they put it in. It only took the entire existence of Walt Disney World. But yeah, so that's Epcot. It's a good park. People should go to it.
When I was in high school, maybe middle school,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a paper about France, and we lived in Florida at the time, and we just went to Epcot, and I just interviewed people who worked in the France pavilion.
Which is very smart, I think.
Yeah, and then we watched the France movie, and during the France movie, our dad took pictures, and we could see a movie about France, and then I put those pictures on a poster, and the French teachers at my school were convinced I had been to France, and they believed that for years, even though I kept being like, no, I went to Epcot. And, Dad took like an artfully composed picture, because there's like a fake Eiffel Tower, and so it looked like I was in front of the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, I did a whole project.
What would we do without Dad?
Going to Epcot. There wouldn't be any photos of us, for one thing. We wouldn't exist.
So yeah, Epcot is 35 years old, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Didn't Magic Kingdom open on October 1st as well?
Yes, 1971. But I wanted to talk about Epcot because it has a cooler anniversary.
Totally, it does.
Disney Magic Kingdom, was 45 last year, obviously, math. And they are still celebrating it, as year celebrations so often are at Disney World. They last for years. It's like, this is the year of celebration, and you're like, it's been the year of celebration for 3 years.
Forever. I got an email today saying that my 45th anniversary discounts were being extended to the end of the year.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, shall we wrap it up?
We should. So our question for the audience today is, what is your Hogwarts house?
Yeah, obviously.
And now that I believe that you've, listened to us, unless you're going to tell me your primary and secondary as told by the Sorting Hat chats, I don't want to hear any crap about being a Gryffindor, because that's not a thing.
Yeah. You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/popculturepie, Tumblr popculturepie.tumblr.com, and like us on Facebook, facebook.com/popculturepie. And you can send us your answer in all of those places or to our email popculturepiecast@gmail.com. And you can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/RSC. That stands for Remarkable Singular Curious. That would be pretty sweet if you could support us, because then I could put us on iTunes.
Woo!
That's all from me. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Colleen. All was well.